Hello everyone, my name is Tongsly, and welcome to a new Warframe video where in this one I'm going to fulfill the special video I promised that I would make to help better explain how to go about Kuva Liches with different types of Warframes, because I have been asked like questions in the comments in the past about like, can you go about facing Kuva Liches with other Warframes, or should you only use certain ones? And this video is going to help kind of pretty much compress that thought and give you guys the answers you're looking for, or at least to the best of my abilities. I am sorry if this video might not be able to fulfill answers more than other YouTubers' videos, but here we go. We're going to give it the all honest try. And we're going to start from A to Z. So that way we can cover every single Warframe to the best of my abilities. But I'm going to cut it short, like in half and short, by determining the Warframes of types of Warframes and pretty much ways that you should use them against the Kuva Lich. So that way, even if you play as other Warframes, if they have similar abilities to Warframes you're playing, at least you know something you can use that can help benefit you in the long run. So, here we go.
Do you have any idea what it takes to reattach severed limbs? You will.
So first off, before we start, we're going to talk about the three roles of Warframes. Really, in my opinion, there's kind of like a fourth role, but the fourth role kind of portrays in the third role as well. The first role of Warframes we have is DPSs. Those are Warframes that are major and all around nothing but attack-based abilities, like being able to fire projectiles, completely decimate multiple targets, even inflict like enormous amounts of dots per second, and just add that up into large amounts of damage. Then you have tank Warframes. These are ones that are supposed to be able to get aggro of the enemies, utilizing their abilities, like such as giving themselves large amounts of sustainability, able to make protective wallings to grab attention of the enemy to attack the wall instead of your allies and yourself, and of course being able to summon powerful companions that as well grabs attention of enemies with large health pools and large amounts of crowd control based abilities, and even pretty much just goes around and just taunts the enemy through attacking them head on. And then you have support Warframes. These are Warframes with abilities mainly focused on crowd control only based abilities, supporting with buffs, healing, as well as maybe even protective abilities similar to a tank, but more focused on protecting them for a temporary amount of time and then afterwards giving them an additional buff. Similar Warframes could be like Haro with his fourth ability, Covenant, allowing him and allies to absorb large amounts of damage, and then afterwards, when the protection wears off, he buffs them all, giving them enhanced critical damage. And then, of course, you have support Warframes that's purely nothing but crowd control. Similar Warframes for that would be like Vauban, or even the dark side, not dark side, but the night side of Equinox. Both of those Warframes are very good examples of crowd control based Warframes. Now, of course, compressing all of that together so I don't literally have to go one Warframe at a time, because literally it would take just so much time to go through all of those Warframes, and a lot of them are not very easy for me to go through the entirety of the game with to get enough data with, especially since I'm mainly the only one playing to be able to actually like test most of this myself. Some of them I'm just gonna have to cut down in short with other Warframes that is, in my opinion, closest like proximity to that type of Warframe. So first off, we're going to talk about Warframes with stealth abilities. Warframes with stealth abilities, there is quite a few of them that has the capabilities to be utilized with stealth-based abilities. You have Ash, which is literally pretty much 100% a space ninja. And funny enough, of course, Warframe is known as, like, pretty much in short, space ninjas, but out of all of them, Ash is the true space ninja. You have Ivara, which is the Huntress Warframe. Her pickpocket-based stealth ability still counts as a stealth, and it puts her into the stealth roster. And then you, of course, have Warframes like Loki. He comes with a just stock ability just called Invisibility. Another Warframe with a stealth ability. Let's see. You also have Wisp. Wisp is the pretty much next Warframe that has the ability to stealth, using her 2 ability, making a clone of herself to grab and get aggro and attention of enemies onto it while turning her invisible for a temporary amount of time, similar to Loki, but I noticed it can have slightly more duration depending on the build. And then last, one that has kind of like a stealth ability is Wukong. Wukong's 2 ability, I notice sometimes when I use it, it does allow me, and no doubt other players probably notice, it allows us to like slip through areas, and it seems enemies do not really like notice it that well. But this could be just completely wrong. If I am wrong, feel free to leave a note in the comments to let me know if that isn't right, but it seems to have do that for me on my end. Warframes that are able to hit enemies with debuffs as well as dots, similar to Warframes like Mag, as well as blind effects from Warframes like Excalibur, Inaros, Excalibur Umbra, Nyx, and many other Warframes with debuffs or dots-based abilities. Pretty much abilities that you normally put a lot of duration to give yourself an advantage by debuffing the enemy with. They do not fully work on a Kuva Lich. They can work, but they only work with pretty much half to 75% decreased duration to the Kuva Lich compared to using it on the regular enemies. This resistance shows that if you're planning to use Warframes that mainly you're just gonna like use Sarin and you're gonna like hit the Kuva Lich with spores, or even use your miasma, and as well using blind effects like from Inaros's Inaros's 1 ability, and Excalibur's blind effect from his 2 or Wisp's 3 ability. The duration will be greatly decreased, but it is still able to work, so it gives you a small window in order for you to be able to do additional damage to the Liches, whereas Warframes with debuff abilities like Sarin's spores and anything that you can proc onto the Kuva Lich, like Mag's magnetism ability with her 2, they will sadly not last as long, but again, they can open up small windows to do additional damage, especially if your Kuva Lich has those weaknesses to the elements of the ability. So like magnetism from Mag, toxin or corrosive from Sarin's spores, or her miasma, which is viral. If you can be able to proc those onto the Kuva Liches, they will be halved, but they are still useful for small windows of opportunity, increased damage, as well as, of course, enhancing the small windows damage using those abilities to your advantage. Warframes with crowd control based abilities. There is a few Warframes that has this type of perk, and a lot of them cannot make many uses of their abilities at all against a Lich with. I'm going to list off mainly 2 Warframes, in my opinion so far, that I've tried using crowd control based abilities that did not work at all versus the Kuva Lich. And those 2 Warframes is Vauban and pretty much literally Limbo, sad to say, especially since I love playing as Limbo. Limbo is one of my favorite Warframes. It was one of the first Warframes that I wanted to get before I got in Valkyr when I first started playing Warframe on my own end. But yeah, Warframes like those 2, their abilities are not that effective at all versus a Kuva Lich. You can use your 3 ability from Vauban to drop down your little satellite beam and fire it at the Kuva Lich's location, as well as you could use your ult, but sadly your ult's Bastille will not lift the Kuva Lich in the air, and the Vortex on my end, it does not seem to work in actually pulling the Kuva Lich towards the Vortex, nor does it make him ragdoll, so his abilities is not very effective at all, as well as Limbo. Going into the Rift as Limbo, you are not immune from being attacked or killed by the Kuva Lich. This has happened to me before. When I played as Limbo, I gotten horribly annihilated by a Kuva Lich, being shot at by, I believe they had the Kuva Kraken at the time, or the Kuva Ogris. It was one of the 2 weapons, and they literally just annihilated me when I thought I was safe in the Rift. Sadly, you're not safe in the Rift. So if you're using Warframes like Vauban or Limbo, I would highly advise trying not to either not use them. I'm not saying it to like force people not to. If you want to, you can still play them, but know your abilities is not really going to help you with the Lich. But it can help you with the Lich in an alternate way, where you can instead use their crowd control abilities to focus on stopping him from having reinforcements give you trouble, so that you can more focus on the Lich with your weapons being the damage, and pretty much, since none of your abilities is going to affect them, you're better off doing that. Just use your crowd control abilities from Warframes like Vauban or Limbo and use them on the enemies, not the Lich, because it's not going to work. I've tried. The next Warframes we're going to be talking about is weapons with exalted weapons. Now, of course, this includes some of the Warframes I also talked about already, but we're going to go about this anyway. Warframes with exalted weapons, some of them are not very effective 100% at least when utilizing their exalted weapons versus the Kuva Lich, compared to the damage that you do against the enemies and the thralls. Most of the damage is mainly able to be major in helping getting rid of the Kuva Lich's shield faster, but when it comes to their health, the Kuva Liches seem to have like this type of enhanced resistance that doesn't make them immune, but they can heavily reduce the damage of Warframe's exalted weapons. Warframes with exalted weapons, a good example of them is Baruch, Excalibur, Hydaelyn, Ivara, Mesa, as well as Titania, Valkyr, and Wukong. All of these Warframes, all of them have exalted weapons. Some of them can be better than others at damaging the Kuva Liches, but all in all of the exalted weapons do have a bit of a resistance, making them not as potent against the Kuva Liches because of that resistance. Now, being that covering a large portion of Warframes that is both about offensive as well as support frames, the only other frames that we could talk about here is the defensive frames, being tanks. Now, tank Warframes, their aggro-based abilities still highly affect the Kuva Liches, actually. A good example of warframes that could get some really good aggro off of the warframe and onto something else would be warframes like Atlas and Chroma. The effigy and Atlas's stone guardians can both gather aggro from the Kuva Lich, which can be highly effective in helping you dealing with your Lich. This can make it so that you can have a lot more opportunities to shoot at your Lich, doing massive damage to them so that you can easily, more effectively kill them. But know this, that grapple abilities from the Kuva Lich can affect some companions. A good example would be Atlas's Stone Guardians. The Stone Guardians can be grappled by the Kuva Lich, which means he will toss and throw them like a dirty dish rag into a trash can, and then he might at some point occasionally focus on you again until either your second Stone Guardian gets his attention, or if that Guardian that he threw gets back up fast enough in time to get his aggro again. When you're dealing with your Kuva Lich, one of the major things you want to make sure not to do, there is one major rule that I can say that you don't want to do. This is literally number one on the board. You don't want to do this. I've tried, I've seen many of other players tried, and it's a horrible idea because it just slows down the rate that you have in killing him, making them take longer to kill, and it's really just pointless. Do not melee the Kuva Liches. Shown an example again with Atlas, as well as with, like, many a times I've seen it happen to players and also myself. Kuva Liches have a very high tolerance versus melee weapons and attacks. You do not want to focus mainly only doing melee against the Kuva Lich, even if you do have abilities like Rhino's Iron Skin to make it so that you really take no damage at all. It's just gonna be pretty much a big waste in energy and a waste of your time, because melee weapons, they are not highly effective. They can still do damage to the Lich's health, but it is not potent really at all, especially when they reach higher ranking levels. Low rank, they may be a lot more effective than higher rank Kuva Liches with melee weapons, but I highly recommend not using melee when dealing with your Kuva Lich. It is not a good idea. You're just going to keep getting grappled by the Kuva Lich, then they're going to damage you, and then throw you around, and even if you have abilities like Rhino, while you're on the ground, you're going to be dealing with Grineer surrounding you slowly more and more, and they're going to constantly shoot at your body, slowly dwindling and removing you entirely of what's protecting you from damage, and sooner or later you're going to get outnumbered that the DPS will be too much for your ability to sustain the handle. And last but not least, I am going to list off some warframes here and there that throughout my times hunting the Kuva Liches for a little bit now, I'm going to list some warframes up there for you guys to give a try. If you guys haven't tried them yet, you can give them a try. Try out my strategy that you use for the fight against the Kuva Liches, and who knows, maybe it'll help you out, especially help you learn how you can use all of the other warframes when dealing with the Kuva Lich. Top warframes that I have enjoyed using to face off against my Kuva Liches would be Atlas, Chroma, Excalibur, the Umbra variant. Garuda can be a very effective warframe as well, so I highly recommend giving her a try, especially if you pull off her first ability to get that protective shield. It should protect you versus the Kuva Lich's projectiles. It has from me, so it should definitely work out for you guys as well. Grendel, definitely a very good choice if you want to have a very good warframe with large amounts of HP, as well as be able to self-sustain using his nutrient ability, his nourishment ability, not nutrient, nourishment, sorry for naming that completely wrong, my bad. Warframes like Haro can be effective as well, but it's not always a good idea to play as a warframe like Haro, because Haro is also a pretty decent example of a Warframe that's kind of squishy. But his ult, of course, protects him from damage, as well as the enhanced crits can make it so that you can do massive damage to the Kuva Lich. If you can pull it off, I say go ahead, give him a try. Inaros, definitely a very good choice, especially if you spam his 1 and 4 ability. Mainly focus on using 1 and 4 and only use the 2 ability if you're very low on health. Get yourself in a safe position, find a random enemy NPC, and start devouring them so that you can refill your entire full health bar back. Get your Scarab armor back up and just keep on trucking. Ivara, definitely a very good choice, especially if you can manage to keep your energy pool up so that you can stay invisible. Like I said before, stealth can be still very helpful when dealing with your Kuva Lich. It can give you a lot of openings to dealing additional damage to your Kuva Lich, but make sure to be careful because stealth Warframes are highly squishy. You want to make sure that you can at least keep going with your stealth ability, meaning you need a good amount of energy. Mag, very good choice as well if you want to focus on mainly using her for her 2 ability and use her 4 ability so that you can keep having a large amount of shields protecting you from the Lich as well as from all of the mass-produced enemies. Use the 2 ability, make sure it has a really good large amount of duration so that way you can be able to open a window to doing large amounts of damage to your Kuva Lich. It will be very, very effective. It's helped me, I'm sure it'll help you. If you use Warframes like Nidus, do not do like what I did right here, which when I fought this other person's Kuva Lich, I forgot to use one of the other major abilities that is very useful for Nidus, and that is his 3 ability, where he will link himself to an enemy so that instead of Nidus taking damage, it is the enemy instead taking damage. Make sure to continuate using Nidus's 1 and 2 ability to get your charges back up, and use your 3 ability to link up with an enemy so that way you can continuate keeping the infested charges and helping you sustain against large amounts of punishment that the Kuva Lich has to offer you. Revenant, definitely another really good choice of Warframe, especially with his 2 ability still able to effect the Kuva Lich. This ability can be very helpful in slowing down the Kuva Lich's ability to damage you, but know the stagger that you afflict him with compared to enemies is a lot shorter, so he will get up much quicker than other enemies, as well as whenever you can, enemies that you have stunned with your 2 ability when they shot you, enthrall them as much as you can. Make sure to enthrall them when they're stunned so that you do not use up too much energy, so that way you can use your thralls to as well get aggro on the Kuva Lich off of you. Saren, I would definitely say, is a very good choice, especially if you want to use a Warframe with a lot of sustained capability, especially if you have the mod Regenerative Molt. Regenerative Molt makes it so that when you use the 2 ability, making your Molt, it makes it so that you also get healed while the Molt is active, but only for a short time before the healing effect goes off, and then it goes straight to the duration of the Molt by itself. So she is very good, especially if you can get Hunter Adrenaline onto Saren, so that way you can be able to convert damage into energy, so you can have infinite energy, continuously use the Molt so that you can get large amounts of health back, and the Molt will be very useful in helping keeping aggro off of you. But know that the aggro from abilities like Molt from Saren is a 50-50 of how it works. If the Kuva Lich sees you and not only the Molt by itself, the Kuva Lich has a chance to still shoot directly in your direction, so be careful when using her Molt ability. Titania is a very good Warframe as well, especially if you can make a build similar to what I have as a build, which allows it so that I can be able to pretty much stay in my exalted weapon form, being the tiny pixie size, to utilize her Arcwing Exalted weapons. Her Exalted primary weapon being the dual Arcwing pistol guns are actually very powerful and able to do quite a lot of damage to a Lich, being that it is an Exalted gun compared to a lot of other Exalted weapon Warframes, which a lot of them are mainly Exalted melees. Valkyr, another very good choice of a Warframe, especially if you want sustainability and as well as damage invincibility using her ult. Her ult is very effective, especially if you want to get a large amount of health back, and she could be very good in helping you keep in combat, but make sure to not utilize the Exalted weapon mainly for facing against the Lich, because again, the Lich will just keep grappling you and throwing you, and do not forget Valkyr's energy drains the longer the weapon is active, so if you get stunned and grappled by the Lich, the percentage will still increase slowly, so you want to be careful with that. If you're going to use a Warframe like Wisp, which is another one I highly recommend, use Wisp by putting her 3 buff motes into the area where you're facing your Lich. Make sure to have a really good amount of stats built into it so that you can get at least a really good amount of healing back from the healing mote. And the additional crowd control from the electricity is very helpful, especially against the numerous amount of thralls and enemy NPC Grineer that will be spawning. And the speed increase to increase your fire rate is just icing on the cake, which is very helpful and very effective. And last but not least, this was also a Warframe that a viewer told me about, as well as someone told me in the comments that they used, and then I started using myself. The last Warframe that I highly recommend, as well with all the other recommended Warframes I threw out there to use against Liches, is Wukong. Using Wukong, mainly focus on using his first ability, which is having his clone, and his second ability, so that way you can use the cloud to use it as a getaway, heal you in the clone, and then keep going back into the fight. Other than that, that is all I have for this video. I'm hoping this video helped out as best as I could. If there's anything I missed out, please let me know in the comments, and of course, I will make sure to look at it as best as I can. And if you guys have recommendations of things you want me to try out as well for when I'm Lich hunting with some of the other Warframes I haven't thrown out in the list yet, let me know in the comments below. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a like, subscribe, and ding that bell so that you guys can stay notified of the content that uploads onto my channel. And as always, I'll see you all in the next video. Take care, and please, all of you, have a wonderful day. Bye, everyone.
It's delicious.